Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about Black Widow and just a quick question and debate overall as to whether it actually should have remained a theatres only release. Now we all know the initial backstory of the movie. It was due for release initially back in May 2020, got pushed back because of the pandemic, and it was recently announced to arrive on theatres and on Disney Plus streaming on July the 7th 2021. Now at the time when it was due to be released last year, we were all asking the question and showing enormous amount of concerns about the overall state of cinemas and theatres in general. This was amplified even more when we saw many movies going on to streaming. We saw the likes of course Warner Brothers announcing a huge slate of movies from the 2021 batch going on both the streaming platform and HBO Max and cinemas as well, and we of course saw Disney Plus start to initiate their streaming plans of announcing them on streaming, but also with an additional fee of $30 as well. But in the last couple of months of this year, we have been seeing a lot more signs of hope within theatres overall. We saw initially Godzilla vs Kong making over 32 million in the US alone and going on to strive over 436 million worldwide, and I believe that still remains the highest grossing film throughout the year so far. We've seen Mortal Kombat make more than its money back on its initial budget of 55 million. Fast and Furious 9 of course has had a huge massive success in China as expected, and we really won't see how well that will do until we see it open up in other international markets very shortly throughout this month. But we've also seen more recently A Quiet Place 2 open up to over 50 million in its opening weekend within the US, which it would have been quite standard for any installment, and in particular the original as well. And then we've also seen the likes of Conjuring 3 open up to 20 and 30 million in the US recently as well. So there are signs there that people are feeling more confident about going back to theatres overall. And I only bring up the question and debate about Black Widow because if we're seeing that audiences are willing to go to theatres to watch the likes of A Quiet Place 2 and The Conjuring, which are far more, if you like, horror genres, then we'd like to think that within a month later on, people would be more confident and willing to see Black Widow, which is of course an MCU installment, and as we all know, MCU entries means guaranteed box office. There is still a very good interest and likability within the Black Widow character, albeit we admit now that following the events of Endgame and the delayed release, maybe the hype and excitement isn't quite as high as what it would have been if it had indeed came out when it was originally meant to come out. But I still feel overall there's a very good hype enough for the movie to come out initially. So this is why I asked that question, because we will eventually, as we recover from this pandemic, get that one movie that will hit it big. Now maybe it won't make $1 billion, and maybe those days of big blockbuster movies hitting that threshold are gone, but we will get that one movie that makes maybe 600, 700, possibly even 800 at the box office theatrically, and that's when I think a lot of these studios will look at certain films that they've already pushed to the streaming format. They may look at that and think, if only we had waited a couple more months and put the movies back, because we will get that initial rush once theatres start opening even more so. When people continue to get more fascinated, there will be that initial rush when we start to see these big event films coming out in theatres more regularly, and people will feel more confident to go out to theatres. You will eventually get that big massive box office smash. And I look at maybe the perspective of Black Widow and Marvel Studios. Are they going to regret maybe putting that decision of having it simultaneously put on theatres and Disney Plus? Now when they initially delayed it, I was actually very supportive of that, because I felt July was enough time to see the overall trajectory of recent releases, and then if they needed to, they could change the decision and have it to theatres only and come to streaming shortly afterwards. Now I got a bit of pushback on Twitter when I stated this following the releasing numbers of The Conjuring's opening weekend. Many people feel that you are denying certain demographics of viewers by having them wait for streaming, but that would have been the case anyway. In a normal climate without the COVID, people would have always had to wait. And if you think about it, it helps the movie industry if the movies can come out theatrically and be much more of a success, particularly for workers who are working in the industry of theatres and cinema chains alike, and it just gives the studios more confidence to go back to theatres, because I'm somebody who I think theatres are, still very much necessary and important overall to the movie industry. I'm quite happy to wait a month or two for them to come on streaming. I know many people feel differently about that. They want these movies to come out straight away, not only to watch them, but also it gives them more content in terms of making videos, doing reviews and tweeting about it. So I understand the desperation and the need for streaming, and I've covered in previous video that yes, they can be cost effective, especially if you normally take a family of 2, 3 or 4 members to the cinema. Paying that $30 additional fee is far more cheaper than going to the cinema, where you may end up paying $60 to $70. So I understand the cost effectiveness of the streaming, but I still value cinematic releases. And we also have to remember that every time a big budget movie such as Black Widow, which costs close to 200 million, when it eventually goes to streaming, it does lose money. There's no way that it can make up the deficit as what it would make in the theatres. Now, if we look at Black Widow, if everything was normal and we would have the initial release of last year, I reckon Black Widow would have made maybe roughly between 700 and 800 million worldwide, because of the strong brand of the MCU, and also the fact that the character is very popular as well, and that would have kicked off very much the phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But there's no way you can recoup that same amount of gross of profit and revenue from streaming. I've covered this already in previous videos. You just won't need to make the same. I mean, they did do calculations roughly, and they stated that each movie would need to gross around at least in the region of 20 to 30 million subscribers, paying those additional fees or the subscription fees to capture and collect the same amount of profit and revenue as what you would get from a normal theatrical release. That's why they do stand to lose money. So I just think in this situation here, maybe Black Widow would have been best just to hang on a little bit longer. As I said before, a month goes by and more people would have got vaccinated, and more cinemas and theatres would have been more confident about opening as well. So that maybe could have bolstered very good for Black Widow. I mean, it's probably now too late to change, because it's only a month away now, and they've done a lot of promotion outlining the film is going to be on the Disney Plus platform as well. So they risk maybe disappointing a lot of their subscribers if they made the sudden change, but they still could do it, but I very much doubt that they will. But I just thought this was a quick question and debate to have about whether Black Widow should really have just held off just a little bit longer and stayed true to theatres, and it could have just been a month release and then gone to streaming afterwards. But at least by having a theatre exclusive release first, you just give the cinemas a chance just to recoup some money first of all, and also the movies overall, before going on to streaming, where it just won't make the same amount of money as what it did if it was a theatrical release. So I firmly stand by that. But let me know what you think in the comments below about Black Widow. Do you still think it was the right decision to have it going onto streaming as well as theatres, despite the fact that we have seen recent box office successes from the likes of A Quiet Place Part 2 and The Conjuring as well, along with the likes of Godzilla vs Kong and Fast and Furious 9? Do you think they should have held off just a little bit longer, and maybe they could have seen that big success? Because as I mentioned before, there would eventually be that one massively successful movie at the theatres that would encourage people to come back in a larger capacity. And will Marvel look at this in hindsight and maybe regret the fact that they went to Disney Plus, and maybe they felt they should have just held off that decision a little bit longer? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please also hit those like and subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.